the climbers, Robert, aren't very much sprinters. That was what was he? Is he thinking he might have a bunch when he gets to the end at Columbia?
I have no idea what he was thinking there.
Amazing, isn't
I think he probably just went to see what was happening. It's interesting to go and look what a bunch sprint's really like from the sprinter's point of view. And I've done it myself when I've been in really good form. And it's a different experience, but it's not something you'd want to go and do every day if you're a climber.
When you say different experience, is it frightening?
Yeah, you've got to be really alert, and it's not something that most climbers do well. You have to be really. You don't want to brake on many corners, and most people tend to brake, whereas sprinters don't. So then you get yourself into trouble because you brake, and then somebody behind you who is a sprinter doesn't, and he'll hit you. And the guys who do the sprints and their lead-up men don't like other people getting in the way, especially if you're pretty small, and it looks like if a gust of wind gets you, it'll blow you away.
I also about gusts of wind read a little interesting piece that you were with Chris Boardman doing a piece for Cycle Sport about riding mountains as well, about knowing not the terrain but about winds as well, and measurement. Just how much go out and understand these mountains, or do you say when looking at a tour route, yes, I'll go and ride that mountain to learn a bit more about it when I'm new to the course?
You really have to go and learn the terrain as it is. Just, you can't sit down and say, or tell anybody what it's going to be like beforehand. The guy has to go there and learn it by himself. But you can help him in certain ways with the wind, and which way the wind's going to blow at certain times of day. It does change, and that'll help him a lot in the future.
But also, if the wind is being very changeable, do you on the mountain, like we see the echelons on the flat, is there also a way in which you're going to try and ride in a particular position exactly the same as an echelon on the flat, where the wind's coming, gusting?
Yeah, there'll be certain mountains where there'll be a little echelon and you have to ride maybe third position, just to be in enough shelter, so it's not too difficult for yourself, and not suffer the little accelerations you get when somebody attacks and forces a pace.
Now, we're talking earlier about your height and your weight. I mean, you're built much more as a mountain climber than myself. 6'4" would just be sitting down the bottom waiting for a tow. But obviously different people can ride under different conditions. But you're having some conversation with Boardman about how he should train for mountain climbing. Whilst we're watching this group go up here, we've got some cyclists listening, Robert. If you're not a good climber, but you could be, what was the most important thing they should practice, like you were talking to Chris Boardman about?
Well, you really have to go on the hills and just ride them, especially on-the-job training. There's no real substitute for it. You can't really do it on a home trainer or on rollers. It's something you have to go and find to learn how to do it.
Is there anything, if you're going to ride a time trial, you understand about eating before the start, how much you eat during the start, how much you drink. Is there anything about food input as well? I mean, this time we've got these mountains right at the back end of the race. They've come 110 kilometres before we hit the bottom of the Aspen, and all the final climbs in the last 64 kilometres are, again, for a climber's point of view, where you're going to eat at a different rate to do different things, or you're just going to take little and often. In any special way?
Most of the riders today would eat an awful lot before they got to the hills, so they got there with the maximum reserves, and then after that they would maybe have just one or two of the energy drinks on the downhills after they finished the mountain. But it doesn't really make much difference if you're a climber or not a climber. For a day like today, you're going to have to get to the mountains with your maximum reserves, and then just deal with it as it comes.
I suppose one thankful thing for the riders today must be the weather condition. I know it's been cold and miserable, but when the sun's baking down, if you're not drinking, can you almost go into oblivion when the sun's coming at you?
I think they prefer to be sweating for like a day like today. It's a lot easier to deal with. It's a lot more comfortable and enjoyable to ride in warm conditions than it is like a day like now.
There we are, 47's back to Serrano and Yoria, who was in that early breakaway group which formed on the Tourmalet. Zilla, we haven't got any news about. He's obviously losing a lot of ground at the moment as they grind their way up here to the top at Luzzari Den. The road's vacant of spectators like we normally get in the Tour de France. It's an entirely different time of the year because there during the Tour de France it's summertime and people come off on their holidays and just pack the sides of the roads. And I'm always staggered actually, Robert, particularly when you go up like the Alpe d'Huez, the massive crowds that come down and you mountain climber, they're going through what looks like a wall of people. Does it affect you at all? I mean, what's it like?
It's like being at a football match for more. That's really the best way to describe it. It's like being in the middle of a football match and being a supporter there. Not many people will get in the way because they jump out of the way at the last moment, and I think that's why they come there to get a little bit of excitement.
Also, they get on television. I'm concerned when they turn around and face the camera and the rider's coming up from behind. Fortunately, not all of them do that, but it all seems to be a bit dangerous.
There are very few instances where you fall off because of data. It happens, but it's not very often.
So 5 kilometres to go for this group here on the climb up to Luzardiden, and these two are beginning to struggle a little bit now under the pressure of the attempting to close that gap down. So could be goodbye then for their chance of getting up, and I think they're going to be pretty stuffed anyway, but they hang on in there, try and move themselves up on the general classification, because otherwise they're going to find themselves drifting down. This is what I would call the snakes and ladders part of the tour this year. Some go up, some go down. The last man on general classification is 3 hours and 10 minutes down, Philip Simeoni. We saw the bus, as we term it, coming over the top of the tournament, maybe 15-20 minutes down on this big group here. Just bear a thought then for a lot of the chaps who are way off the back, who are going to soldier on in and attempt to get to Madrid when we bring you that finish live on Eurosport on Sunday, and then going straight on to the World Track Championships from Colombia, when Chris Baldwin will be coming to spend a couple of days in the commentary box to give us the benefit of experience in the Pursuit Championship at altitude, where I'm sure we're likely to see some records broken. And the season being very well extended now with the World Championships in October. I know, Robert, with your problems with the group model and not being able to race the back end of the year, it's affected your form right now. But what's the rather general attitude about the World Championships being held so late in the year?
It's really a crazy idea. The season was already too long beforehand, ending at the end of October. And now to put a major race in October is crazy. It's a crazy situation. I think they'll do it to see what happens. And next year they'll be back to the traditional method of having it in the start of September again.
Yeah, we've got the Olympics next year anyway, which we're bringing you on Eurosport, and that falls straight after the Tour de France next year. And we'll see how the World Championship gets sorted out. It certainly does seem an extremely long season to me. I know other sports, to me, football seems wall to wall with about 4 weeks gap in between, but then they're only playing at weekends and not racing every day of the week. I mean, as the riders are coming up here, you've got to bear in mind these riders, some of them are actually racing seriously from early on the season, as early as January. What used to be the training races have now become very competitive competition indeed, as riders search for points on the international league as such, because it's by the points you get hired by the teams, and your teams get into selection races like the Tour de France. So it's a hard old season now. Years gone by, you can start the season going down to Mediterranean, doing races which you only really race the last hour. But it's all changed now. It's all systems go from January right through to October. The final few kilometres toward the top of the Luzardiden, with these riders coming up here in the Tour of Spain, moved into the back end of the year, and 4 kilometres to go for that little leading group chasing Tusum. Have no chance now, I think, of getting across up to this group at the front, and still the yellow pedals on the front. I was talking about the numbers of races throughout the year. I mean, how many races would you do, Robert, in a season? How many days riding would you do?
In a normal year, you do maybe 110 days. And interestingly enough, Alex Zulu was talking about that, and he said at the end of the Vuelta they've done 108 days, and there's still another month's racing to go after that. So he's probably looking for a break after this race. But a normal season is 110 days of racing, which works out like 1 every 3 days.
And of course, what a lot of people don't realise is when you're not racing, you're travelling to the next race, I suppose, or getting back from the one you've just done.
Unfortunately, yes.
Again, it always astounds me that the British riders, we seem to lack talent, and the riders stay racing in Great Britain, and yet there's only 22 miles of water across. They seem to think that going over to race in Europe is like going to a different world. But if you're living in Europe, you've got to travel a long way to some races, because they're not all on your doorstep, are they? I mean, it's as easy to get from England, I suppose. I know when Malcolm Elliott came back from living in racing in Spain, he used to commute to and from Europe, from England, didn't he?
Yeah, well, nowadays that you can get a plane from most major cities, and you could, if you lived in England or Paris, it wouldn't make much difference. Sometimes you'll be home quicker if you lived in England than you would if you lived in France or in Germany. And
so all you young riders out there, think nothing of going across the channel and starting to compete, because the other thing which you do get in Europe is you get bigger fields, more activity, more hard racing, and of course an opportunity to race in conditions like this, where these big mountains, although we're looking here at the Tour of Spain, the Tour de France come up here, many other races come over here, things like the Tour de l'Avenir. There's also local races as well. We'll take in some of the big climbs, and then as an amateur riding with amateur teams, you can learn what it's all about and make your progress through into the top pro ranks. Somebody's not going to walk across into Great Britain with a checkbook and sign a British rider just because he's won half a dozen Premier category races. You've really got to race over here. Otherwise you get blasted, because again, apart from the mountains, the speed, Robert, is different over here from racing back in England, isn't it?
Well, you've got to take into account that you've got a lot more guys at the same level as you are who are going to be racing, so then the speed's a lot higher.
How did you start then? I've read it. Tell the people, what did you do when you came out?
I came over to France when I was 19, if I remember correctly. It was a long time ago. And I raced in a French club called 17b for 1 year. And I was fortunate enough to do well, and I won most of the important races in France. And at the same year I was with Phil Anderson, and we were fortunate enough to turn professional for the Peugeot team at the end of that year. But as I was saying, it's difficult to cope with having to race with maybe 20 guys of your own ability than it is if you come from somewhere like England and you've only been racing with 2 or 3 guys of your own level, and you've had to not really needed any real tactics to win any races.
Yes, it always occurred to me watching amateur race back in Great Britain with maybe only 50, 60 riders on the start list, and then you come over here and you've got about 150. Hell of a different tactics, a decent echelon in a continental race, often as big as the start back in Great Britain. You're quite right. I used to go to amateur race. Oh, the winner's going to come from these 6. It was as simple as that. And a couple of blokes would puncture and a little break go, and that was it, and the race was over, and the speed wasn't too high. I'm not denigrating people winning victories back in Great Britain, but this is where it's at, and this is where it's all going on. I can always recommend you good people back in England to go and get Rupert Guinness's book called The Fallen Legion, which writes up about Robert Millar's start in the sport, and those of Alan Piper, Phil Anderson, Stephen Roche, and many of the Brits who came over, and the Australians, and the Scots, of course, to go across. And I actually called it once on television about the English-speaking rider, and they said that I thought that I called you an Englishman. I know damn well you're from Scotland. I've seen you up there in Glasgow in years gone by, and I think you rode a time trial when I was at Halfords. We sponsored some time trial from, I think it was Glasgow to Edinburgh or something, or what the hell it was, and certainly seen you back in action. No, you're a Scotsman now, but the British riders, let's call it that way, to me, I'd love to see a lot more make the grade and be over here. We're getting a bit short of talent right now on the continental scene. We keep our fingers crossed for Chris Boardman and a speedy recovery into full fitness for next year. Chris, if you're listening. It's slimming down a bit, Robert.
There's not many guys talking now that Brunel's up to pace a little bit. They seem to have warmed up a little bit. You can see on their faces that they're looking a little bit warmer. So now their muscles are working a lot better.
So with Brunel doing that wonderful job on the front, and another man has had a new lease of life. He's certainly started to shell riders out the black as they're heading towards the finish at the top of Lutz Ardiden. Hang on at the back then for Grim Death Garcia of the Benesto team, the one that I suppose has only been the one that showed any fire in the Benesto squad so far. Montoya had a little bit of go the other day, but failed in Barcelona to make any dent on Jalabert, who rode on to a fine victory inside the final 2 kilometres. Well, it's not my job, Robert, to stick my neck on the line and say who's going to win this one. Have you got any predictions?
Well, if it's like this, Jalabert will win. He's the best sprinter there, although Virenque is very fast at the top of the mountain. But the way Laurent Jalabert has been riding up until now, I don't see anybody beat him in the sprint for today.
Well, Malcolm Murray, previous victor of the Tour of Spain, riding on his nice big large tubed aluminium climb bike, dropping off the back here, and also dropping off the back and struggling. We've lost Garcia for Benesto. The pressure up in front. This has got to be one, surely, for Virenque to try and win today, though. But has he got it in his legs, eh?
Virenque's in 5th position at the moment, and he's marking down his story. But it looks like he's losing the wheel, so this is getting very interesting.
Well, Adano has been struggling always to... Yes, here we're back with Virenque hanging on the back behind Pistore. Jalabert still wedged nicely in the middle. Alano just up in front of Jalabert.
Pistori and Virenque look like they're struggling just a little bit, although it would be surprising for someone like Virenque to let the group go at a stage like this when he knows he can win the stage.
Pistori is riding hard here, staying in contention. It's thinning down all the time. Brunel has done a marvellous job, this man who took that yellow jersey in the Tour de France when he outsprinted Miguel Indurain. A lot of people booed him for that one, but I think he did just the right job on the day, because Indurain was going on for his 5th successive victory. But Brunel certainly seems to be a man who's come back. He was hot tip from some years ago, had a bad patch, 1 or 2 injuries, but he's fought his way back now to superb form. He's been a wonderful teammate for Jalabert as they hit 1 kilometre to go, and so Pistori's got blasted out, and Virenque is beginning to struggle. He's blown now.
The pace must be really fast for someone like Virenque to let the wheels have to let the wheels go on the last kilometre. It's not a situation that you would normally be in.
Well, he certainly had to go this year in the Tour to take that polka dot jersey. He got twice as many points as everybody else, didn't he?
He did win the men's competition very easily this year.
Well, it's a hard old season. He rode hard, did Virenque, to get that polka dot jersey. He'd like to get a stage victory, particularly in France, where he's so well liked. But Jalabert cuts inside Brunel then, and Brunel just managed to stay out of trouble. And Jalabert's going away. He just rolled inside his teammate, and he pedalled away here. Looks like he's just coming in at the end of a club run almost. But the rest of them, you can understand how they've been grovelling up this mountainside, how quick they've been riding. Now Jalabert can accelerate.
You can see how fast Jalabert's going here. Looks like he's taken the big ring, and he's going to take another 10-15 seconds out of Milano today when he has the opportunity. He must be feeling really strong, because he's attacked far too far from the finish for it to be just a simple sprint. He's looking to take another 15-20 seconds out of Milano.
Jalabert has been riding so strongly throughout the whole of this Tour. Unbelievable performances that we've seen from him. He's just not content to roll in and just drift off the front in the last metres or so, as Alano is coming up again. I think he's recognised he has to give Alano a run for his money, because the other day at Sierra Nevada, when Jalabert just kicked back a bit to allow Dietz to take the stage, Alano came up very quickly indeed and nearly got the 2nd place off Jalabert. No doubt about it now, Jalabert knows what he has to do to take yet another stage victory. He won into Alto Naraco, he won into Orense, he won the stage at Avila, he won the stage at Barcelona, and Jalabert heading in now for his 5th stage victory. He took 7 victories last year in the Tour of Spain. It looks like he could equal that again this year, and not only that, he could be still in the yellow jersey when we get to Madrid on Sunday. This man looks unstoppable. 5 hours and 34 minutes of racing under the most disgusting conditions, and out there there's a lot of men still will come in maybe half an hour, 40 minutes after Jalabert has shown that he's still boss. Alano coming over in 2nd spot, Brunel behind in 3rd, and Virenque bouncing out the saddle here to come over in 4th spot. Little battles going on further down here, because there will be quite a shuttling going on the general classification. Virenque trying to get time back on Bartoli, who's dropped out of the leading group. There, Pistori coming across the line. So it's been a hard day here. The soigneurs getting their men and giving them a quick rub down with the old towel and putting some warm clothing on them. Something tells me, Robert, they're going to be thankful it's all over today, eh?
I would think so.
Oh dear, what's next? They go down to the old hotel, massage, food, recovery. Oh, and tomorrow.
Another day.
Well, Robert, we spoke on the San Sebastian Classic, and we've had you with us on Eurosport yesterday and today, sitting here. What do you think about it being a commentator rather than a rider out there with those conditions, eh?
Well, today I'd rather be here. And then in the start of the Tour of Spain, I was a bit disappointed not being there, because it's a nice race to do. But it seemed like how it is today. It doesn't really doesn't really impress me much.
Well, Robert being honest with it, and I would agree with him there. It's been a very tough race today. In fact, all the way through, something's been happening every day in the Tour of Spain. A look at Jalabert coming on to the finish line to take his 5th success in the Tour of Spain this year. He took the yellow jersey on the stage up the Alto Naranco when again he broke away from the group on a bit of a short, sharp, stiff climb it was too. Took the yellow jersey off Pinagonda, who unfortunately retired for the race a bit further back. Alana had been the holder of that yellow jersey following the first prologue time trial on the first day, and after the first stage when Minali won the sprint. So then Jalabert took it over on the 3rd stage. He's kept it on his shoulders ever since then. Not only that, he's progressively improved his position on the points at the end of the line. They count the riders in, allotting 25 points to the first and so on down. He got the points jersey. He's also got the white jersey for the King of the Mountains as well. So Jalabert, 3 jerseys to wear, and I don't know if we're going to have time on Eurosport today. We're supposed to go off air at 5 o'clock, so we've got half an hour yet. We might in fact see the presentation of the various jerseys. The rest of the riders are coming in now behind Jalabert. The presentation of jerseys, Robert was quite fascinated yesterday looking at the podium, weren't you, Dave?
Yeah, it was fascinating to see how they had their podium working. It looked like a Swiss cuckoo clock for a moment, with the way Jalabert would get in one door and out the other.
We hope we can see it and bring it to you, because I think we've seen all the presentations, but that's the way it was yesterday, that's the way it'll be today. And the left-hand side there shows you the time back, and we're going to try and keep an eye out. So people like Axel Merckx came in 9.5 minutes down, so we should be able to A, pick up the presentation, and B, pick up some of the stragglers coming in, providing we stay on air closer towards 5 o'clock. But let's give you some idea that the damage that was done by those leading 12 men who went away on that climb over the Tourmalet. Not very nice conditions at all for anybody connected with the race today. The riders, the officials, spectators, commentators, what have you, because it's a pretty grotty sort of day. Let's hope conditions get somewhat better tomorrow, because we've got another thumping day in the mountains. On this occasion, we're not going to actually finish up the top of Mountain. We're going on a route which will take them over 2 big climbs, over the Col dos Bobisc and over back into Spain and over the Alto de Portelay, before we get down towards the finish after some 150 odd kilometres. Not perhaps the toughest today, but the legs will certainly be rather tired, I think, after the efforts which they put in. And you can see some of these riders coming in now. We're in that group at the top of the Tourmalet, so they've lost 4 minutes on the climb up Lutz-Ardiden. And that's one of the troubles with the big mountain climbs. If the man with the hammer gets you, you can suddenly lose a lot of time.
It's good to see a bit of a crowd today compared with yesterday. Yesterday was very disappointing. There's nobody really at the finish. But today is a little bit more interesting. It's despite the conditions, it's a good thing to see.
Yep, and so not quite the same again on the Tour de France when the people are on holiday as such and the weather's that much better. Of course, it makes it easy to get off and go down, because one thing about the riders, Robert, you know, when they get straight back down the hill very quickly indeed, and even the winner of the stage, when he's up there, as you know, gets his presentation, gets put into a car, police outright, wow, down the mountainside, where all the spectators, particularly when they've closed off and they have to walk all the way up, and they close the roads on the way down for the riders to go down. And then after that, down goes the vehicles. Looking back at the slow motion of Jalabert cutting inside Brunel, they have to go back down here. On the right-hand side, the ordinary public are trying to get their cars down. On the left-hand side, race vehicles go down, and it's just unbelievable when you get a big turnout of people. It can take sometimes up to an hour. In fact, I remember one day this year in the Tour de France, we were at the top, and I think it was La Plagne, and we couldn't move for 40 minutes. And we were the officials who just sat there for 40 minutes in this big traffic jam. So I just parked the car and went and sat with my feet in the stream and thought about things that had been happening that day and a few days before as well, and contemplated nature and the lovely and off we went down. And it still took like an hour and a half to get down the damn mountain. But today it won't be quite so bad for the riders or the officials, all the spectators to get away. But they've seen a fascinating performance here by Jalabert, and well, the rumour has it that Indurain will come back next year to try and get his Tour of Spain victory. It's one he hasn't got on his list of successes. I think if he'd ridden this year, he'd have had a hard ride from the Once team, are looking extremely strong, and they've been there right the way through the season. Because when you think this fellow here, Jalabert, started the season by winning the Paris-Nice, he also won the Milan San Remo. That's probably almost back-to-back or end-to-end one of the greatest performance I've seen. I think probably Kelly took the Lombardy and the Milan San Remo one year, but it's a job, isn't it, Robert, to keep your form through the whole year. He did have 5 weeks off, didn't he?
Yeah, he did have 5 weeks off after the Classics, but then again he had earned that rest. He'd been racing since January in the Tour of Mallorca, and he was actually racing there. He was racing for the race lead. He's riding remarkably well this year, probably the strongest rider of the professionals this year.
So we're looking then at Jalabert, who's had an awfully long season and a very successful one too. The interesting thing is, when we get to the end of the Tour of Spain, we'll tot up the points that he's achieved in the UCI rankings, and he might well move up to be the #1 rider in the world, and he certainly deserves it.
Voilà, alors que actuellement sur le petit écran, eh bien, nous revoyons l'image de Laurent Jalabert tout à fait joie en franchissant la ligne d'arrivée.
The officials, spectators and commentators et al., journalists all waiting for the arrival of some of the men that were with that Jalabert group at the start of the bottom of this climb, and we're going to have to wait an awful long time, as I think this looked to me like Zula coming in. Ooh, he was so close at one time, wasn't he? He's got to be something like about 8 minutes down.
I think the man with the hammer has got him for today. He's not going very fast at all.
Well, yesterday he won that stage up to Plad de Barret. He was way in a group of riders right early on in the race. 8 men went clear, and they took off at some 90 kilometers. So he did 100 kilometers, 107 kilometers out yesterday, either with the 8 men, when they built up quite a considerable lead on the rest of the pack, but the lead grew and grew and grew, and one by one his leading riders dropped away, and the only man to survive yesterday was Zula, who came in 3 minutes and 20 seconds up on Jalabert, who beat Bartoli into the line. So Zula had his success yesterday. His general classification position won't change all that much. He might just bob up and down a few places. 22nd at the moment on GC, 24 minutes down. And there I can see the clock going on the deficit of a man who started out in this race with a fine time trial performance, just failing to take the yellow jersey off Olana by a couple of seconds, and of course stage victor in the Tour de France this year at a second place too, so he's overall, so Zula's had a very good season likewise, and he's just got to torture his body a bit further up the climb to the finish and join his teammates for the descent. So what about the Once lot? They all seem to finish fairly well up, so we'll get them back down to the hotel pretty quickly. I feel sorry some of the other teams have to wait for their lads who are coming in maybe 40 minutes late. There it is. Go up to 10 minutes. That's interesting because on the Tourmalet, I'm sure I saw Axel Merckx go in 9 minutes and 9.5 minutes down. The weather's getting slightly better and getting lighter as such, but there'll be little groups forming at the bottom. And if we stay on air long enough, we might well see if Axel Merckx comes up here. But I'm certain he's going to drop out of the top 12 place at the moment. The one other man we haven't seen, Robert, and correct me if I'm wrong, De La Santa doesn't seem to be about the place either. He was like 13th this morning.
I thought I spotted De La Santa come in about 5 or 6 minutes down there.
Did he?
On his own. I wasn't sure, but it's very difficult to recognise the riders on a day like today.
Yep,
they haven't got the same faces as a normal day.
All inside there, anoraks as well, and waterproofs to keep them warm. And Zula, not ideal conditions for a man who has glasses either to ride through the rain. So Zula's home anyway, and that's good news. He's finally made it. I don't think we're going to be able to stay on air long enough to get Axel Merckx coming up here, so disappointing day for him and one or two other riders. So the general classification will have a bit of a shakeout by the time we get into tomorrow's stage, and I hope you'll join us for that particular stage tomorrow, which will take the riders from Lutz Saint-Solvier to San Binyanyingo. I'll have to practice that one for tomorrow, but the route tomorrow then, covering 157 kilometres. There it is, the stage tomorrow, 157 kilometres for the riders, and Jalabert in the yellow jersey. We're going to have some trick shots coming up on Eurosport to fill in the time before 5 o'clock when the next programme was scheduled to start. So they've yet again come a bit ahead of schedule, and that's very much down to the way in which the Once team have defended the yellow jersey of Jalabert. Do join us then tomorrow about the same time for more activity. Let's hope the weather is somewhat better. The big mountains are in the middle of the race. We'll bring you all the news. We've joined Robert Millar, myself, David Duffield, and hasta mañana. Despite the fact that Laurent Jalabert holds a phenomenal lead on the overall classification in the Tour of Spain, 6 minutes 28 seconds on Abra Milano, it's still giving other riders a chance to attack and try and get a victory. And this man here, you're looking at Ugramov, is determined to do something in this race, which has been full of disappointment for him. So today, on stage 18, from Saint-Sauvier to Samignan-Nigo, he might well pull off the victory he has been looking for. He's been struggling with illness. He also got stuck behind that crash into Zamora when he lost about 40-odd seconds. He's been now tracked on this climb by two other riders from the Seiko team, Michel Bartoli and Paolo Forniciari. The whole act really came into being as the riders set onto the first climb of the Obisque. It was Ugramov that attacked on that first climb, some 50 kilometres from the start this morning on the stage, and he went up there. He'd already been with a breakaway group which included Bartoli, Ferrano, and they had set off together with Garcia Camacho and Serrano and Pascal Hervé at 30 kilometres. Ugramov had got to that group after some 20-kilometre ride inside. It was time to say bye-bye, blokes, and off he went on the Obisque. So we're seeing Ugramov now really putting the pressure on the race today. The position then that Ugramov is in the lead. He went over the top of the Obisque ahead of Neil Stevens. Just 42 seconds was the gap at that particular point. Robert Sierra was over in third spot. Jalabert was fourth. Pistori was in fifth spot, and the rest of the group stacked quite behind it. One thought really on the Obisque then, as Ugramov here 1 minute 10 seconds ahead of the chasers, that Ugramov might be caught on the descent, but he dropped like a stone and stayed away from them, and he's now still out there as we're attacking this climb then up the Col de Portelet. And when they get to the top of this climb, 94 kilometres will have been covered, and this man will be virtually on his own for something approaching some 50 kilometres. A superb ride. I'm a great Ugramov supporter, and I'm talking to Robert Millar, my co-commentator here, and he said perhaps you're the only one that supports him, David. Tell me why, Rob. What's about Ugramov that made you say that?
Well, unfortunately, the Russian riders don't have very good reputations. They're rather quiet people, very reserved, and Ugramov is one of them. He doesn't have many friends, but it's unfortunate because he's a very good rider.
Yeah, I remember this finish of the Tour de France last year when he and Pantani were up there second and third, and with Indrange smiling. He looked very glum indeed. You know, you thought being on the rostrum of the Tour de France would at least put a smile on his face.
Sometimes you wonder if they haven't had an operation to take their smile away from them. They're so reserved. Yep. But it doesn't stop them riding very fast indeed.
Of course, he's been around a long time. One of these professionals who came on the scene after the Iron Curtain came down, and so many of the riders came from Russia to join where they could see the money. And of course, I think, Robert, didn't they come across for much less salaries than some of the European riders were riding for?
Yeah, when the Russians first came to Europe to ride for the Alpine team in Italy, the money they were getting was very poor indeed, and it was a bit like an amateur setup. But now they've all split up and moved to different countries and different teams, and they're getting the money that they deserve now.
103 then the gap back to Bartoli and Fornaciari. Bartoli here, 151, the team captain of the Psycho team. They ride with the Psycho stickers all over their jerseys, more prominent than Mercatone Uno, because outside Italy they're allowed to increase the size of the Psycho name because that's their main sponsor outside Italy, where Mercatone Uno, who is a supermarket group, is the main sponsor in certain other races, including the Tour de France. Hello, it looks like he's taken off his covered off his feet here and abandoned them on the side of the road. The two riding very well together here at the moment, and they've got to do just that because Bartoli took a right old pasting yesterday. He lost 8 minutes and 15 seconds on the stage yesterday, which finished up at Les Ardennes, and he dropped down the classification from 5th to 11th. So he's now trying to fight his way back, and we're looking down the field here to see the rest of the riders coming up, and I should have thought that probably at some point we might see the yellow perils on the front, the Once team driving this one up this climb. What sort of climb is it, Robert? We're just looking at the top end of this one, but you've been over it before.
It's one of the main roads in from France into Spain, and it's a very good surface on the way up, not so nice on the way down. Normally tailwind for the riders. A long gradual climb, nothing really steep, but it gets a little bit steeper towards the top where the climbers have a little bit of an advantage. It's a very easy hill for the group to chase down somebody because it's such a wide road, and the wind plays a lot of comes into play a lot.
And what about the chances then of Ugrimov staying away over the top of this climb? Because further down the valley, I mean, he only had 42 seconds when he went over the top of the Obisque. He got away from them on the descent through there, and at the kilometre 70, Ugrimov came through 2 minutes 36 seconds ahead of the main group, which is led by Linas Beruta over that sprint, with Robert Sierra in third spot. So the gap back to the Once at that moment was 2 minutes 36 seconds. It looks now from our clock that he's well away from the Once team at the moment, so he's driving away off the front of the Once squad. And looking back down here, we've got what, 3 more riders coming up, so this today is going to be a real tough old day. So looks like more chance of Ugrimov staying away at the moment.
Yeah, normally a day like today would be the last chance for a lot of riders who are not really concerned by the general classification. So this Ugramov's realised that, and he's taken his life in his hands for today for the stage win. And I honestly won't be too concerned. Ugramov's a long way down at this stage of the race. This is probably the last chance for Ugrimov to salvage something from his Tour of Spain.
Yeah, and he had not a very good season either, did he? Because he didn't ride the Tour de France after that problem in the Tour of Switzerland when he got thumped by a mountain bike rider and cracked his ribs open. Ugramov's lying 27th on the general classification, 44 minutes down on Jalabert. So no wonder the little knot of yellow riders who we'll shortly see bringing the main pack up are quite happy to let him drift away off the front. But still off the top of this climb in towards the finish. They've got a long old way to go because there's still another 63 kilometres ahead on the run down into the finish at Savignago. And so they've got some way to go yet, but I think those little groups that are forming ahead of the Once team here, driving up with Jalabert sat in the middle, may be quite happy to let them stay out there for a short while on this rather interesting route, which has taken them out of Lutz-Saint-Sauveur towards Lourdes, and we turned left on the road out of from Cotteret to Lourdes, back parallel to the French Spanish border, then turn left, and the riders now are heading absolutely due south in towards Sambagnago. Near the bottom of the descent from that climb, the first category climb of the Col de Portalet, still in the lead, Ugrimov, chased down by these two riders here over the top of the climb. The gap was 1 minute and 3 seconds between Ugrimov and Bartoli and Fornaciari, and Ugrimov may be happy, I think, if they come up to him, because there really has been a lot of splits over the top and over 4 minutes back to the main group, which includes the yellow jersey of Jalabert. So perhaps it might be an opportunity for him to get some help. He's been really forcing the pace all day today, has the Gavis team. And now he's getting some team information. Here they're coming up very quickly. It's a nice move. His team has come up to say, hang on, you've got help coming up here, and I'm sure that will aid him in his run in towards the finish. Getting on the flatter part of the course, getting towards the 100 kilometres covered today. It's a fairly short stage, 157 kilometres of racing today, and here they come, the yellow train really driving this one along. Well, he attacked up the climb of the Obisque, did Ugrimov. He was only 40 seconds ahead at 50 kilometres over the top. He's now got some help here as they're going along. So he's had about 50 kilometres out on his own, something over 30 miles, and now he's got some assistance, having got up to a breakaway group and then steamed off on his own, and there's more on the way down by the looks of it. They've just reeled in the Casablanca rider who went over the top, 2 minutes and 16 seconds down on Ugrimov. He couldn't quite get up to this little twosome in front, really being driven along by Bartoli. Another of the new young kids on the block. Have you ridden much for this fellow Bartoli at all, Robert? Because he seems to be tipped very much by the Italian press as one of the up-and-coming lads.
I've ridden with him before. He got really strong. Last year he wasn't quite as strong. And I rode a number of races with him where he showed himself in the front, but not in the final of most of the races. But he's came on a lot this year, and he's one of the bright prospects for the future.
There seem to be quite a lot of lads breaking through. In fact, in this race we've been watching the performances of Pistori, who's been climbing so well, and the rumours are flying around thick and fast now. Let me just tell you, this is a rumour that evidently he had only got a verbal contract for 2 years, and his team manager was talking to him a few weeks back and wasn't too keen on him going to ride for the team next year, and virtually he was left to drift off, and he was looking for something else to do, was Pistori. They didn't think he'd actually come on good. He's a first-year pro, and he hadn't shown much this year. And of course, he's been romping up the mountains, riding like a dream. He went away in a break with Jalabert the other day. He's now got the white jersey as second on the King of the Mountains classification, and suddenly he's got lots of teams sniffing around him because he hasn't got a contract for next year. Well, he has got a contract, verbal one. Gavis have been talking to him, so these rumours say. Lampre's been talking to him. Carrera has been talking to him, and Once have even been talking to him and said, well, why don't you come and join us, even though you're an Italian? Look, we've had Jalabert in the team and people like Brunel in the team, so it doesn't matter, although we're mainly a Spanish-based team. So these are the conversations going on at the moment for Pistori. But I do advise you, these are all rumours, and journalists are very good at shooting rumours around. But what would you do, Robert, in Pistori's place at the moment, except for looking for more money, because that's suddenly become hot property?
Obviously, with his performances in this Tour of Spain, he's going to become a bit of a bright prospect, and a lot of teams will be wanting to sign him for next year. But Pistori's situation, if I was him, I think I'd probably stay in Italy for the moment and wait a little bit to see how I progress before thinking of moving to a team like Onsi, where the workload is very heavy. He'll probably be a little bit more comfortable if he stays in an Italian team for next year.
It does seem, too, also that you can have a good season and the next one is not so good, particularly if you're a young rider. You just get a lucky break like this. I mean, Berzin has been quite a good rider over the years, but he did so extremely well in the Giro year before that, or year before this, and everybody hyped him up, and he's been riding reasonably well since then. He had a fairly good season, but has not been quite at the same level. I mean, he's an up and down business being a professional bike racer, isn't it?
It's very difficult to have a good season and to follow it up with another excellent season the year afterwards. It takes a lot out of you. And, your body takes a little bit of time to recover in between each season. Even though the winter does seem long when you're not actually competing, you need a long time to build up reserves again, which you're going to have to use over the following year.
He said if he joins another team, they expect a lot of him, and that would show what sort of. I mean, he obviously wouldn't go in as team leader if he went to other teams. What sort of pressure would they put on him?
Well, he'll move, if he moves to another team, he'll move there as team climber, which is maybe not as under as much pressure as the actual team leader, but he is expected to do well in the climbs, and to do that you have to follow the race very closely up until the climbs, and you're under almost the same amount of pressure as a team leader, although you don't basically have the same responsibility. And it can be difficult to cope with when you're a young guy like him and you don't really have the experience of the different races.
Well, that breakaway group, which included Naibar, Meyer, Ozols, Garcia Casas, Tibaldi, who were trying to hound down the threesome up in front, has now been swallowed up by the yellow perils here. And there, the team manager, Saiz of the Onse team, an amazing character. He certainly has built up a very, very strong squad here, the Once team. Having a word with Jalabert there with the white cap on, riding in the yellow jersey. You can tell the difference between his yellow jersey of the team as a race leader and the Once riders, because the Once one's got a black patch running down from the arm. He sent it straight up the front for some reason. What's going on here?
I think he's given them out new orders for today, and looks like Jalbert's going to tell the guys who are riding here, the Espana, to take it easy now and let somebody else do the chasing. Once don't really have to chase these guys down. They're all more than 40 minutes behind us, and there's a danger to them.
It looks like the local equivalent of the pom-pom girls are out there on the side of the road to cheer the riders through, and the field is regrouping here. At one time that main bunch had splint. I'm not quite sure how many are off the back still, but at one time there's a group which was some 11 minutes down at the 86-kilometre mark on the flyaway Ugrimov, and the group containing the yellow jerseys surrounding that worn by Jalabert was only some 2:23 behind Ugrimov, so there's about another 7 minutes back. There's been some more ride, but I rather think that on that final climb some have jumped across now and building up this, what is now the main peloton, with just 3 escapers up in front. As ever, the Arteac team beginning to move through on the front. They've been very, very lively throughout the whole of the race, but we never see much of them. Well, I've never seen much of them outside Spain. What's your experience with the Arteac people, Robert, since the time you used to ride in Spain?
They're a bit like the small Belgian teams. They tend to focus on their local events and the Spanish races, so we never really see them in any other country except Spain. They do have some excellent riders, and they get really hyped up for the Tour of Spain. It's their main objective of the year, and that's probably why they're riding today. They don't have anybody in the front, and with the help from the Kelmy team, they're going to have to try and chase down the guys that are in the front now.
And the yellow jersey comes zooming through, and that is Jalabert, dropping like a stone, trying to keep out of trouble too. Sensible going towards the front. We've had 1 or 2 crashes, nothing really serious since the race set out on some of the declines. They got safely off the clop of the Tourmalet yesterday, and if you didn't see yesterday's stage, it was very murky indeed over the Tourmalet when a lot of damage was done. We saw Axel Merckx go over 9.5 minutes down on the main group, who listening to our program yesterday. Well, I can tell you at the end of the stage he'd really lost a whole hatful of time. He lost 23 minutes and 16 seconds, Axel Merckx, and dropped down from 12th to 21st overall. Disappointing day for him. He was suffering. He got some sort of flu or chest complaint, and they kept providing him with hot chocolate to try and warm him up in the very damp and miserable conditions, but Axel ground his way to the finish and dropped down now to 21st. A great disappointment for him, and I'm sure his father's been out on the race, that after that excellent ride the day before when he tried to follow Jalabert, that he should suffer in such a way and lose so much time yesterday. So that's a bad day then for Axel Merckx. These 3 riders up in front at the moment look like they may stay away. You never know in this bike game, though. We're going to take a short break. Do come back to see if they stay away. The field streaming along, chasing after the riders you can see in the top left-hand corner of your screen. It was all started by that man Ugrimov there. After this morning he managed to get up to a group that had attacked some 30 kilometers from the start. We started with 119 riders of the 180 or so that started way back from Madrid, so we've been losing quite a lot, and they're now heading back into Spain and are in Spain, having been out on that little excursion into France over the Pyrenees as such. Not much in the way of big mountains from now on in, so if anybody like Ugrimov wants to get a stage victory, this has got to be it, but he's got 2 very quick men up there with him. He went after a breakaway group of Arenas, Garces Camacho, Bartoli, Serrano and Pascal Herb. After 30 kilometers being covered, they then went on to cover 35 kilometers in the hour, and Ugrimov came up to them as they went up the first climb some 50 kilometers after the start, and it was there that Ugrimov went over the top, leaving the main bunch behind at 42 seconds as the rest of his breakaway group had been absorbed. But now Bartoli, who at one time was with him, went back in the main group, attacked again on the climb up the climb we just had for you at the Col de Portelet, and now the field is regrouping. A lot more men have come up across that gap. Looking down there to Banner, we're not seeing what's on that one, but we do understand that the race is going through the home village of Escatin. Now, Escatin had ridden all this season with the Mappe team. In fact, he's a very, very strong right-hand man of Tony Rominger. but he signed a contract to move on, and I think it's to Kelmy next year. And therefore the Mapei team decided that they wouldn't have him in their squad this year, and of course that's left Olano really without a good mountain climber, because Escartin, a tremendous climber, very strong team man as well, and evidently the people in the village, Escartin's village, are not very happy, and the threats flying about, again it might be typical journalist rumours, is that they're lining up in his village with old rotten tomatoes and eggs, and they're going to pelt the Mapei people. I suppose they won't be able to hit the riders, but they might have a good go at the Mapei car. We've had a really incident-packed Tour of Spain this year, what with the fights going on, the hurricanes, the threats of snow, the motorcycles crashing out, and riders getting spaghetti bolognese, which made 40 of them feel rather ill, and have the old two-step next day on their bicycles to the nearest toilets. Well, it's one of those races this year, and Robert, I think you say always this race is full of incidents, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very interesting race to follow. There's always something different every day. Always something to have a laugh about usually as well.
Well, you can laugh at the end of the season, but when you start the season, it must have been a bit much for you.
Well, when you go there, you're not thinking of it as a holiday at all. But you do tend to enjoy the Tour of Spain more than the other two big tours in the year. It's an easier race to deal with, especially for younger riders, and I think that's why we're seeing a lot more of the young prospects showing what they're capable of doing.
Well, a young-ish prospect, Jalabert, has really dominated this race. In fact, the French press are very much full of it now, because barring accidents, he could ride into Madrid wearing that yellow jersey. It's going to be the first major tour the French have had on their belt since Laurent Fignon in the Tour of Italy in 1989. And Eddie Merckx has been quoted as well as saying that if Jalabert concentrated, he feels that he could actually beat Indurain in the Tour de France. So it's amazing, he said, Eddie, that he's been able to ride right the way through from the start of the season, winning the Pyrenees, taking the Milan San Remo, and here right at the back end of the season still be going strong in the Vuelta, taking not only the yellow jersey but winning stages as well. So that's the great words of great Eddie Merckx. But of course it's easy in the heat of the event to say one thing, and then of course somebody's got to live up to it in future years. So Jalabert winning that stage yesterday, his 21st victory in his career this year in 1995, and it's hoisted him, by the way, as Alvaro Pino here of the Kelme team, himself a great rider. In fact, you rode with this fellow, didn't you, eh? Come on, let's say a bit about him.
Yeah, I know Alvaro Pino very well. He beat me in the 1986 Tour of Spain, and a very good rider in his time, and now he's a very canny director sportif as well. You can see him giving instructions to his rider here just to wait for the group, because he's wasting his time in between the two groups here. He's going to wait for the main group to come back, and then he'll ride with them to try and chase the leading pack down.
How much importance is the comments from a team manager like that, Robert, to a rider who thinks he can do something?
Well, with having someone in the car like Pino is very valuable, because he's ridden so many Tour of Spain's, maybe 10 or so, and he knows what's happening, and he can see. He's got a better view of the race from the car than he has from the rider's point of view, especially when the rider's alone like his guy is. And he knows what's going to happen. He's told his guy to wait for the bunch, and then he'll be able to do a bit of work to help them to try to come back in the front.
Well, 1986 that Pino won the Tour of Spain. Robert Billy in second spot, my co-commentator here today, and Sean Kelly back in third spot. Any thoughts when you finally retire about being a team manager, Robert? Does that cross your mind?
Yeah, it has, but it's a difficult situation to deal with when you want to keep riding and you don't really want to stop to think about things like that. It's not something I would object to, but I wouldn't say I'm looking forward to the idea of stopping racing quite yet.
Well, and the team manager's job is not an easy one, by the way. The phone never stops ringing, and you're working 365 days of the year as well. Mind you, bike riders are pretty well of the same sort, either riding or racing or training or moving to and from events. So it's a fair, tough old life they lead. And in fact, as we're waiting for this rider to go back into the bunch now, quite sensibly there, the season, certainly since you started, Robert, it must have got a lot longer. I mean, the races seem to be very fast in the early part of the year, and here we are coming into October with the World Championships. I can't remember it being quite so fierce and so long as this season.
Well, 15 years back, the races started in February fairly gently. It was only training races, and they ended at the end of September, basically. Now you've added a month before onto the season and another month afterwards, so it's a different thing to deal with, and the races have got a lot more competitive as well. And the basic standard of riding is a lot higher than it used to be.
I've noticed that. It seems to be a lot faster too, but part of the quality of the riders, the races seem to be conducted at a faster speed.
Well, there's a lot more information on training, on diet and different aspects of looking after yourself to do well over a whole year. So that tends to push the pace up, and the races have got a lot faster as that progressed.
What about equipment? I don't, this sort of bike we're looking at, the diamond frame, if you excuse that sort of oversized down tube there on the Bianchi bicycle, it looks visually from here very similar to it was 50, 60, 70 years ago almost. But is there any subtle change you've noticed in your career that's made them that much better, that much quicker, and made performances better?
No, I haven't really noticed any big difference in the bikes. They tend to be a little bit more rigid now, and probably a little heavier than they used to be. But the main difference is the guys are a lot better prepared for the task ahead of them, and I think that's what makes the speed so high nowadays.
Well, there we are watching these two Psycho rides on the front, and Ugramov's gone back in to take a bit of draft and sit in there. One thing that many of them are using now, these brake levers with the gear mix in there as well. But are you still favour the down tube? In fact, I think here the down tube changed also on Ugramov's bike. Any reason for that?
Well, you only tend to keep the down tube changers for weight reasons for the bike that you're going to use in the mountains, the light bike, and probably that's why Ugramov's got him on his titanium Bianchi there. I've moved over to the handlebar changing system now, but it's basically because it's a lot easier for the mechanics to set up all the bikes the same than it is over a personal preference.
Well, we are the words of wisdom coming up to Ugramov, who is sitting in at the moment, having had that long lone ride on his own, and he's now got the Psycho Mokoto Nuno riders with him. And the gap, the last one we had over the top of the mountain, was over 4 minutes, but the chase is coming pretty quick and regularly now, so they've got to really try hard to stay away, these three riders, on the run into finish at Savignan-Igo. Well, the riders coming through. In fact, what was confusing me looking up there, the actual laps they've got to do, is that they're going to do this lap through Savignan-Igo, and so at Savignan-Igo they're going to come through and go round again, and they've been putting the cameras up, and I was doing my notes here and got, of course, utterly confused. They're only just going to the 20-kilometre to go point as such. I thought suddenly looking at my watch how they're going to finish in such a short space of time. In reality, they've got this circuit to do, which also takes them twice through the little place where Escartin lives. So we haven't had the tomato throwing episode yet. And I wonder if it's going to happen, or that's just up to the journalist to concoct a story to make it rather interesting. There we are. That's the true distance to go, by the way, confusing everybody. Our cameraman by poking it up at the 6 and 7 kilometres to go boards, and the main pack here now much stronger, much bigger. As I say, it had split into two sizable groups way up back on the climb up towards the top of the first category, Portelet. And if the organisers put that in the hope it might change the overall classification on the King of the Mountains, then no way would that be so, because Laurent Jalabert has got so many points there on the King of the Mountains. He just is not going to be dislodged from that top spot, and he also takes the jersey for being best on the points competition as well. The gap is now suddenly come down to 1 minute, and it could be all over, bar the shouting. 1 minute, they'll absolutely be able to see them down the road now. You can see the mountain in the background. They come across there, the little flurry of snow just on the tops of the mountains from yesterday, little storms that hit the race. But right now, on the flatter part, the sun coming down, temperatures a little warmer than yesterday when they were hardly much above 3 to 5 degrees all day long, and causing problems for the riders. And now Castelblanche have done so much work here. That seems a very good move from the Once team to say, let somebody else have a go, Robert, because Once have done so much chasing and looks to be in their favour now.
Well, the Once guys at either rest day, they've been basically riding on the whole race on the front. It's up to the other teams now to do something with this race. They've got to justify being there for their sponsors also, and they have to take over the leading a little bit. With only a gap of 1 minute for the last 220 kilometers to go, it's going to be very close with 3 riders in the front. A peloton like this will easily take 30 seconds out of them every 10 kilometers, so it's going to be a very close thing.
And they're going extremely quick to this Artiac team, who have still got all of 8 riders in the race at the moment. They started 9 men. They've only dropped 1 man off so far. It's amazing how many riders have really got out from a lot of the teams. Looking down the list, the Once team is the only one that's still there. They've got every man that's still racing that started, although Alex Zuller did want to go home a couple of days before he finally won that stage up the mountain. So they are the only compact and complete team in the race, the team from the Once squad, but some of them are even worse off than that, with the team from Chazelle down to just 2 riders at the moment, and Gann just down to 3. So some of the riders having dropped out through misfortune. I mean, Gann must really be the most unfortunate team of the year. I think if you had a trophy at the end of the year, the most unfortunate team, it must go to Gann, because Darami, their rider, didn't even start the prologue because he ran into a police van and couldn't start the prologue, so that put them out of it right from day one. And Albia got involved in the crash as well. And my mind goes back to the Tour de France when we had Chris Boardman out on day one. So Gann not having a very good year this year, Robert.
Well, maybe being an insurance company, they've taken out some cover for these things.
They need, I think, at the moment.
Well, hopefully for them they have.
Yeah, well, I remember when I was the rally squad, we did in fact insure our riders so that if they crashed and couldn't ride, we could pay their salary out of insurance, because it's a very expensive thing to have a salary bill and to find the riders can't compete for not their own reason, but through illness or sickness and an accident. So there we are, the Archak on the front. They make quite a change here to see them driving. We see nothing but yellow on the front. I think I want to ask you to adjust the colour of my television set, but it seems that we're now getting a different shape of things. And Calme coming through here. Cabello goes reasonably quickly, I think, in the sprint. I can't think they would expect anybody else to do much more, but they've probably at the moment also decided with the Archak team it's about time the Spaniards got in with a shout for a stage victory, because we had Olano win the prologue stage on day one. And since then, the Spaniards really have been out of the frame when it comes to a stage victory. So perhaps they're deciding today is the day when they're going to pull back these leading 3 who are now coming through the finishing line for the Meta Balance. They're not too interested in the points for this intermediate sprint competition, which has been dominated by the rider from the Telecom team, Stefan Bessermann. Much to the delight of the Germans. The Germans have done so well in this race so far. They had that stage victory at Serra Nevada when Dietz got that one, and then into Murcia when Hen got it, and Busch got the one to Valencia. And our good friend and co-commentator Rudy Altig looking very fit and well, working with Peter Voigt. Very pleased with the Germans' performance so far this Vuelta. Clock running is going to be a bit of a difficult job to stay away. The sun shining. What a tremendous contrast to the problems we had up in the Pyrenees when the rain and the threat of snow kept the spectators away, and they all stopped at home to watch it on television. Looking down the group there, it looks like Axel Merckx is in that little group, which will be happy news, I think, to Motorola followers. And as they go across the line now, the gap only coming down, was it going to be less than 30 seconds? That looks like it might be over and done with. No, just outside 30. Good ride by the Archaks on the front, then the Calme rider. You see the yellow jersey Alonce in behind them. A nice little pack here, all keen to pull this thing back together. And any sprinter that's made it over the mountain will be licking his lips for the hope here of getting a victory. 42 seconds then, the lead for our 3 riders. I'm saying that the Motorola people are happy. I think that they've got Axel Merckx looking a lot better after the problems he's had. Paul Sherwin, who's one of the cycling commentators, consultants they call him in France, I understand he's going off to the mountain bike world championships in Germany. I can't think why Motorola Man will be going all the way to the world championships in Germany, as they're doing a sponsorship there. So I wonder if he's looking for a mountain bike rider next year with the Olympic Games, including a mountain bike section in the Olympics. I don't know. All, no doubt, again, will be revealed. The hot pursuit then, some 42 seconds separating this group from the 3 riders on the front. Ugramov, who set it all off when he went away on that climb with 50 kilometres of the race covered. Here we are now in the finished town doing one complete lap round here. We haven't seen the tomato throwing and egg throwing we were promised by some segments of the press, so let's hope the race goes through without any problems at all. But the little group in front are well in sight now of the chasers, and here are our leaders out on the road, circling back round in toward the town. Bartoli, 151 there, and his teammate, the big tall fellow, who is probably, I think, one of the 100-kilometre riders from the times gone by, Forniciari, driving along here for the Psycho Mercatonian team, and the man who started all, Ugramov, hanging on in at the back.
going to have a difficult time staying ahead here because the circuit now heads back out into the countryside, and there's some long hills, if I remember correctly. And it's pretty windy out there, so the chasing bunch is going to have the advantage when they head back out into the countryside.
It must be a disappointment, Robert, and you've been a great mountain climber, to have a course like this, with the last climb being some 60 kilometres from the finish once you go over the thing, and to get away and then have this sort of rolling armada behind that just eats up the earth behind you, because you do all the work in the mountains and then have these long runs back into the finish. It just must be a bit. I mean, look at, I remember romping away in the Leeds Classic up the Home Moss. When you get to the top of that, because you've got a long run back into Leeds, haven't you?
Well, sometimes you're disappointed, but you got to remember that the race is for everybody, not only for climbers or for sprinters, for something for everybody every day, and you have to be able to deal with that. You can see the guys are looking back here because they know the bunch is going to catch them soon, and they'll probably receive the information that the bunch is catching them up very fast. So they'll probably be just trying to get over the next hill with a little bit of a lead, and then they'll be swallowed up with a bunch, and they can try and hide in there and stay with them until the finish.
There's, of course, always the opportunity. Sometimes it happens that the bunch eases back a bit too soon, and they go away. That's always the hope that they suddenly get blown up at the back just as they close up, and the gap stays it is. But I think it's going to be not so much a possibility. In fact, Gugremov seems to have stopped relaying on the front now. Looking through, it's all the Archiecs in fine numbers. Yeah, they look quite relaxed back in the bunch, don't they? Oh, Richard Bronk's Lotus team beginning to move up to the front as well. Bronk had been hoping, I'm sure, for a stage victory in the Vuelta this year, but didn't come quite his way.
Bronk has a good sprint finish, but in a group of this size, maybe 60, 70 riders, it'll be difficult to win. He may be up there in the first 5 or 6, but
well, the big man, of course, with the Archak team, this fellow Saitov, the Russian, isn't he? Now he's riding number 17, and he has been able to get over some of the mountains. So the one fellow we've got to watch out. In fact, I wouldn't have thought that Archak would drive this one hard if Saitov hadn't made it.
Yeah, Saitov must be present back in the middle of the group, otherwise they wouldn't be doing so much work to pull back the leaders.
He's been around quite a long time, actually, Saitov, hasn't he? I think in fact he won some of the sprints competitions. Looking back here, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, Saitov won the special sprints competition, and he won it again a couple of years back as well. So he's no stranger to the Spanish setup as such, and one of the Russians that actually packed his bag and went down into Spain rather than into Italy like some of the other ones have done. Just a quick look at the white jersey of Pistori. We haven't seen much of him. He was just off your screen on the right-hand side. And as I said earlier on, a man under much interest as regards some of the team managers, who has a contract with the Pulte team, which at the moment is only a verbal one, so other people are still looking around to try and get him in their squad. But I suspect that he may well stay there with Pulte, as Robert was saying. I'm intrigued, actually, he has a verbal contract. This may be as journalism, Robert. I thought most things get written down this day and age, because you never know what's going to happen, do you?
Well, he's probably received a verbal contract to say that he can leave, and now that he's riding so well, they've changed their mind, and there's nothing to prove that he said out in the first place. Because normally, for a new professional, they have a 2-year contract, and that'll be written and signed. So if he told him he can leave, and then he started producing some remarkable feats, then probably changed their mind.
Yeah, because there was a rumour that, again it's rumoured that on the career squad, when Leonardo Sierra started slinging punches in the race and got thrown out, that they decided that was ungentlemanly conduct, and he broke his contract, and he was thrown out of the team. They're saying, well, you know, trying one way of getting rid of him next year. I suppose sometimes you're not riding very well, there's always that opportunity. That's only, again, rumours flying around all over the place. The other fellow that was involved in that punch-up, by the way, is in the Spanish squad, and at the moment the UCI have not taken any action against the fighting going on, so it looks like he will probably be able to go over to the World Championships and compete over there. So we'll have to wait and see just how he does then. in the World Championships, having involved himself in the fisticuffs. And so Gonzalez Arrieta will be going to Colombia, as we understand at the moment. The UCI making no decision on that little kerfuffle, which provided some amusement to all and sundry, and fortunately didn't result in too much damage to the rider. Although Ugrimov has decided that he might as well try and ride off the front of this little one, and he's been very active today. He waited for a bit behind those two. I thought he was time to go back into the bunch, but he's gone off the front 10 kilometres to go. That's a very, very, I don't know, I wouldn't say mad thing to do, but it's, as you said, Robert, on these climbs, it's an opportunity.
He's going to have a great deal of difficulty staying in the front here, because there's a number of hills like this long dragging hill with the wind in your face, and the bunch, there'll be a number of reactions back from the bunch to try and catch him. He probably just took a rest behind the two guys, the two Italians there, and then he's thrown down his last chance, but it'll be very difficult for him now.
And there the other two riders getting swept up one by one. The hopefuls are being reeled in. It's been like that all the way through the day since the first attacks came after some 30 kilometres. Arnas, Garces Camacho, Bartoli, Serrano and Pascal went away. They lasted out there for like the best part of 20 kilometres. They hit the bottom of the mountain. They were joined by Ugrimov, who then left everybody over the top and pressed on, and is still persisting with his attempt to stay clear of this big bunch of riders and to get a victory in this year's tour on his list of successes. Again, the rolling closure you see on the right hand side, unlike the Tour de France where the roads are absolutely shut down, the Spanish operate the rolling closure. Of course, for such a big country as well, it's quite possible to do it, leave large spaces without any cars. It's always been a problem back in Great Britain when we had rolling closure, that one half of the road seems to be occupied by cars for large stretches of the road. 9 Ks to go for the chasing group, and they can see their man in front down there. In your experience, Robert, was this rolling closure quite effective in Spain?
Yeah, normally Spain is quite safe place to race. There's not much danger from cars inside the road. Only the days where there's side wind does it get a little bit dangerous, and then the cars move directly onto the grass. So there's not really a lot of problems. It's a very big country, and out in the country there's not a lot of danger at all. The roads are very wide, and there's no problems really.
What's the attitude of the spectators out there? You know, we get them sort of mad Italian tifoses, and you get the French who seem to be very intellectual about cycling. What's the sort of Spanish attitude? Seems to be very strongly supported.
It's a more down-to-earth attitude with the cycling in Spain. Not so seasonal as France. Probably a little bit like Italy, although not as passionate about the cycling as the Italians are. More down-to-earth approach to the thing.
Well, they've got a good team here, the Spaniards, the Arjak team, which has got Orlando Rodriguez in the squad, Portugal rider, the Russian rider Saitov as well. They're trying to set this one up. There's 7 kilometres to go for Ugrimov for a sprint finish if they can catch this fella. Ugrimov determined to try and stay away on this, the 18 stage then from Lutz Sansara to Samignan-Nigo, and the big bunch have got him in sight now, and they're going to leave him out there to fry at the moment. Still the Arjak team have been doing so much of the driving hard, and that gap probably less than 20 seconds, and it could well be all over by the Shad. Because we talk about the sprinters in this group that might well be in with the Shad, we mustn't forget the very quick riding of Jalabert when it comes to sprinting. He came into prominence mainly as a sprint specialist, and now he's proved himself an all-rounder. And if they come together, Jalabert could be looking for his 6th victory in the Tour this year. We've got another road stage tomorrow, and then the following day it'll be the time trial stage, Fiat, at just a 42-kilometre time trial. And then the final stage on the Sunday is in Madrid, for the circuit of the centre of Madrid. So Jalabert, who got 7 victories last year in the Tour of Spain, looking perhaps to try and equal his success last year. It isn't the highest scoring, by the way. The great Belgian sprinter Freddie Mertens won no less than 12 stages one year in the Tour of Spain. He seems to have set up most records of stage victories as of old Freddie. A demon sprinter he was. So Jalabert's 7 last year, still a very good performance indeed, one of the best there is, but he's going a long way to try and equal the bold Freddie. 23 seconds, still hovering out there. Would you like being sucked on in the middle of that, Robin?
It's a lot more comfortable than what Rugelmott is for the moment. The Atiak guys have got come back together again and got it organised. But maybe this long ride will give Rugelmott the chance to settle down again and to have a little bit of an advantage. Every time they go downhill, the peloton is going to ride faster than Rugelmott, and every time he's on an uphill, he'll be able to maintain the advantage that he has.
And there the Telecom colours beginning to come forward just a little bit toward the front. Saitov is in the he doesn't wear the Castle Blanche colour. I just saw him there, by the way, when we go back. You have to look out for the Russian national colours. He's the Russian national champion. I did spot him back there, so he's made it over the big mountain, and that's why Archat are driving hard. He's got a jersey which got mainly white at the top, then it goes down to red and a power blue after that. So I think that as many other people know, there's one or two sprinters that made it over the top. We're going to get these hopefuls hammering off the front to try and do something about it. Pascal Herber went on an early break this morning. He's decided that he might as well put a bit of a sandwich on it by going for a late one as well. He's another chap who came into pro ranks very late on, didn't he? Well, he's 30 something when he turned pro, 29.
Yeah, I think he turned professional in late 20s.
Yeah.
He spent a lot of time in the amateur ranks in France and won basically almost all the races before he decided to turn professional. Just to see how good he was, and he's turned out to be a very good rider. He's always present in the breaks that happen every day, and Festina are very lucky that they have somebody like him who is able to do that.
16 seconds it is, and still driving hard on the front. There you can see 1, 2, third back on that string from the Archat. You see that white jersey there? That is Saitov, the Russian champion, who would dearly like to get himself a stage victory today. And still, nothing you can do but just persist with this one. 4 kilometres to go. Well, at the end of the race, if he does get swallowed up and they've got an award for the man of the match, it ought to go to this fellow. He's determined today to try and get a stage victory. Very smooth, pedalling, stylish rider, but this big bunch contains some pretty quick men. I see TVM also beginning to move through to the front, because if Jeske Skibby, for instance, made it over the top of that climb, and I think no reason why he shouldn't.
Yeah, looks like Skibby.
Yeah, he'd be looking for another stage victory. He's already had one this year. And there's Saitov, third back.
Jesper Skibby will probably have an attack maybe 1,200 meters from the line like he usually does, but everybody knows he's going to do it, so it's just a matter of waiting for him to do it, really.
Does anybody deliberately follow him?
Yeah, there'll be a lot of guys waiting for him to attack just before the last kilometer flag, so he'll be a watched man, especially if he's come to the front and shown that he's there.
How much, Robert, with so many new riders coming on now, does it break the rhythm? And you've been out for a long time now. The forms seem to be there. I was talking to Stephen Roach about, races had a certain pattern. They seem to be not so readable now.
Well, until there's a number of established riders controlling the race, there's no real pattern to the race when the new professionals come along. They tend to keep the same ideas as they had in the amateurs.
Well, another man I think who would like to ride on Skibby's tail will be that great Russian Ekimov, who's another specialist when he comes from about 1 kilometre out or 2 kilometres out to start driving away. So we might see a bit of a change in the chasing group when people like Ekimov and Skibby start to find their way through to the front and see if they can stretch it and crack the elastic and get away. But still Ugrimov out in front. He finished third in the Tour of Italy this year. Ugrimov looking for a stage victory. A couple of stage victories in the Tour of France last year. But this little lot, I think, have got him well and truly in their sights. Here he is. Disappointed not to ride the Tour this year. Looks for a victory because this might be the last big occasion other than the World Championships for him to do something spectacular. They've got him well and truly in sight. Ugrimov now just about 20 seconds ahead. Most of the Arctic lead-out men have drifted away, and it's left Saitov with only one man on the front, and so the attacks are coming. As we thought, inside the final 2 kilometres, those hopefuls who can't expect to outsprint Saitov or Vust or Wesemann or any of the other big hitters in there are now going to try and go for the long ones.
It's Alonso here. Similar rider to Skibby, the same idea, attack 2 kilometres from the finish, and hope he can hold them off. He can ride very fast. For the last kilometre, he's normally a lead-up man for the sprinters that Clemenceau had in the past.
And there is the 1 kilometre to go. Ugrimov, who went away on the climb up the 50 kilometres from the start, the Col d'Aubisque, and he's been out there now for something about 105 kilometres, and they've nearly got him. Ugrimov has now been closed down. In fact, no, that's all I know, isn't it?
That's Skibby going across to Alonso, so no, it's not Skibby.
And Psycho again, but Alonso's got some company, but he's not going to do much help, I think. So Alonso looked back over his shoulders, and again Psycho decided to try and put the pressure on here. What a thrill job this man's doing out here, hanging on for grim death, and they're all coming at him from all directions. They all got towed up by the Artiach team, and Alonso's still going. Here comes the rest of the bit, and he's got the finish inside. Ugrimov now trying to go, and out of the main pack comes the Telecom rider. It looks as if they're going to try and close him down on the run into the finish, and still Ugrimov is hanging on here, and the crowd are applauding this fellow. He's ridden so hard, 107 kilometres on the front to try and get the stage victory he so desperately wants in this race. He's now 150 metres to go, 100 metres to go, and they're coming at him now. The big sprinter, they're coming. Saito's unleashing his sprint there and trying to come up to it, and he gets out the saddle and goes yet again. Vuss is in there too, in the red jersey, and he's been overtaken on the line, and that's it. He's lost that one. Looks like it went to side of the Artiach team, and well, what a disappointment for Ugrimov. He got swallowed up at the last moment, and those chaps holding hands there are the Artiach team. They set their man at sight of, and he came past Ugrimov with about 50 metres to go, and poor Ugrimov now has gone right back to about 10th or 12th in the front. What a great disappointment. All say, what a shame. You got a feel for him, Robert, haven't you?
Well, I hope Saito's going to buy him a vodka now, because he won't be talking to him otherwise for a long time.
Let's look at it from the top then, as Ugrimov hanging on there. Saitov in that whitish jersey in the centre comes thundering through here. There is Ugrimov. He's got him in his sights. Ugramov's got absolutely nothing left. And I think that's Skibby out there on the side. I'm not quite sure. I was concentrating on Saitov so much. Looks like Skibby, and then Weizmann probably for the red jersey on the special sprints for Telecom. So Telecom had worked hard to set them out. It is Skibby, isn't it, coming up here? I was concentrating on, first of all, Ugrimov, who was trying to find some more power. They got a slightly uphill finish here, which was going to benefit him, but Saitov started pumping on the pedals, fellow with the white top to his jersey. He gets that one. Yep. And in fact, it was not Weizmann, but Vuss that came in second spot. Let's look at that one again. Saitov. Yeah. Vuss over into third. And apparently Peter Meinhardt that finished in third spot, not Skibby. Have a look at that one again. I didn't quite pick up. Not too much to check the red jersey, because the trouble is confusion in this race when you get reddish coloured jerseys, but the Castle Branch...
He's not Marshall Wurst, it's not his style. He's like a Spanish rider from the same team.
What's the Castle Branch? It looked a bit like him to me.
No, it's not Marcel, because the other sprints are on the brake levers.
Yeah. No. Well, certainly no doubt about Saitov taking that one. 4 hours and 5 minutes for the 157 kilometres today. Look in the background there at the Pyrenees. The riders were very happy to say bye-bye to that little lot as the sprinters are coming back into their own, but still Jalabert wears the yellow. Saitov taking the stage victory.
Tour of Spain today, 220 kilometers to travel from San Benanigo to Catalayud on the road down to Madrid, where the race will finish on Sunday. Well, the riders have come out of the mountains, and Frenchman Laurent Jalabert is still safely placed in the leader's yellow jersey. Jalabert leading by over 6 minutes this morning from the Spaniard Abraham Olano, and seemingly on his way to his first ever major 3-week stage race victory in Madrid on Sunday. Well, the riders certainly having a quiet time today, having come out of the mountains, taking it easy. Very few attacks before about 25 kilometers to go. The first came from the Basque rider Roberto Lezeca of the Euskadi team, which rides for the Basque region in Spain. He was way down in the standings, 2.5 hours down on the leader Jalabert, but he wasn't able to stay out and he was soon picked up. Then came another attack. It came from the Swede Mikael Andersson of the Spanish Sikasal team. But Andersson, who's recognised as a time trialer, wasn't able to stay out. Quite a lot of people in the main bunch fancied this stage going down to a sprint to try and gain 1 or 2 extra pesetas just before the race finishes, so no way that Andersson could stay out. He was picked up. And then came another attack. The Italian Valerio Tibaldi of the Festina Lotus team tried his hand, but the experienced 30-year-old, twice a winner of a stage on the Tour de France in the past, was also picked up. It really did look as though it was all going to end in a sprint today. So Jalabert's Once team was sitting on the front of the pack, stopping any of his rivals trying to win back useful seconds or even minutes on today's stage. And a quiet day really for the race leader as they headed in to Catalayud. And then came an attack from the Dane Jesper Skibbe and the Russian Vyacheslav Ekimov. They tried their hand, but they weren't able to stay away, and it all came down to a sprint. The sprint, though, was marred by a crash involving the German Marcel Wust and the American George Hincapie of the Motorola team. While we were concentrating on that, the Italian Adriano Baffi won the sprint. You can see the crash on your right, the two riders bringing each other down. It looked very nasty. In the end, they were both suffering from light concussion, but no serious injuries, luckily for them. And Baffi winning easily in the end from the Russian Asiati Saitov, who won yesterday's stage. But as you can see, Saitov in the white jersey on the left of your picture loses his foot in the block of his pedal while he turns around to see what happened in the sprint. But he finished second. No worries for either Wust or for Hincapie. They were up and walking over the line. They may get a fright when they see these slow motion pictures this evening. But Adriano Baffi wins, a good win for him, his first on the Tour of Spain this year. So Baffi wins from Saitov, then come Overs, Veerman and Von Steen, 1 or 2 of the lesser-known riders getting up amongst the first places today. The race now heads down towards Madrid. There's a time trial and then the final stage in the streets of the capital. And it looks very much as though Frenchman Laurent Jalabert, who's dominated the race from almost the first day, will win. He has a handsome 6.5-minute lead over Abraham Olano of Spain. And Jalabert certainly deserves that yellow jersey.
It's hot, it's hard, it's the time trial on the Tour of Spain. The 20th stage, 41.6 kilometres in all to be covered at this town, which in fact Alcalá de Haranas is the headquarters of the Fiat factory. The riders are starting there, finishing there as well, and they've got this 41.6 kilometres to cover. That's just over some 26 miles. In fact, it's 26 miles exactly for the riders on this particular circuit, which is triangular shaped and fairly flat for most of the course, but there is a stinking hill just after the start, and after that they settle down, but the wind is blowing strongly as well, and some of the early times we had coming in are rather spectacular. When we look at the results at the moment of Andersson, the rider from Sweden, 52 minutes and 7 seconds. He did a jolly good time trial in the earlier time trial we had in the Tour of Spain, but now it's all changing. The riders are coming here thick and fast, closely packed together. Bobrick, Ekimov and Ugramov started just 1 minute separating each of those 3 riders on the start list, and it looks like they're now going to trounce Andersson from his first place. 52.07 was his position, Anderson, and now those three are going to push him down the general classification. The wind's blowing there, you see, across the course at the moment, making it rather difficult, but the speeds are still very quick indeed, nearly 30 miles an hour despite the conditions on the day here today. At the back end of the field, as ever, on the time trial, we start with the leader starting last overall, and there we are. We saw those riders coming in. I thought something was going to change, and Ugrimov, Ekimov and Bobrick have now pushed Brignoli and Anderson down into 4th and 5th spot. 51 minutes and 37 seconds the time then for Ugrimov, who may now have a smile on his face. I remember that Robert Millar said the other day that he thought perhaps that Ugrimov had an operation to take the smile off his face because he always looked so glum. Today he must be smiling, but the fast men are out on the road. Bobrick, Ekimov and Ugrimov are not that far up on the general classification. They've started today. Ugrimov in 25th spot. He's 43 minutes and 56 seconds down on Jalabert, who is the overall race leader. So the big men are yet to come. Last men off the starting block will be Jalabert, ahead of him by 2 minutes, Alano and Brunel, as the riders then set out on this course. As far as some are concerned today, it's going to be just a war against themselves and the terrain. They've got the run into Madrid tomorrow. They've suffered in the Tour of Spain so far, which by now has covered some 2,000 miles in all. Eddie Bowman's coming in here, look, 50th down, 56 minutes 40 seconds. So that's 44 kilometers per hour. And we're back out in the course with Jalabert riding here, last man off. Jalabert, not perhaps the world's greatest time trialist. He's ridden about 10 time trials so far this year. In the Tour of Valencia, he was second behind Zuller. In the Paris-Nice, he was second behind Bobrick, who's riding today. In the Cricket International, he was third behind Pascal Lance, who's now out of this race. In the Tour of the Basque Country, Zuller and Rominger pushed him down into 3rd spot. The Tour of Catalonia, Mauri beat him there, Jalabert being in 2nd spot. And in the Tour de France, he finished in 6th and 7th spot on the 2 time trials there. I don't think that Jalabert would say he's the world's greatest time trialist, but he's been so good, so dominant in the mountains, and also a very quick sprinter indeed. If this man really gets his time trialing together, he could be a serious threat for people like Miguel Indurain and Tony Rominger in the big tours. But at the moment, time trialing, not perhaps his major strength. Despite the encouragement here in the background there from, say, his team manager, who is urging his man on to try harder, go quicker. But as far as Jalabert is concerned, coming into the time trial today, the last but one stage in the Tour of Spain, he's got a lead of 6 minutes and 28 seconds on Abraham Alano. Brunel in 3rd spot from his own team. Once is at 7 minutes and 50 seconds. Malcolm Mauri also from his own team is at 8 minutes and 51 seconds. So that's the current standing overall. Ugrimov, Ekimov and Bobrick, and that's a nice little threesome at the top there. The lads from behind the Iron Curtain showing their enormous strength, but a good ride by Brignoli to pop into 4th place ahead of Michael Anderson from Sweden. That, I'm sure, will change. That's the 33-kilometre point, showing that Ugrimov, Ekimov and Bobrick, Brignoli, Anderson, you've just seen that as a finish point. So, all right, the seconds have changed just a little bit, but that will be the point which we'll have to look out for as these leading riders go through to see if they're going to topple Ugrimov, Ekimov and Bobrick. And certainly I think it'll happen, because when you understand that Olano, last but one off, has been the Spanish time trial champion, and in the prologue time trial on the first day he trounced the opposition to win that one and take the yellow jersey. And when we had the time trial at Salamanca on stage 7 over 41 kilometers, he was first there in an impressive way and nearly took the yellow jersey off Jalabert, just failing to do so by a slender 6 seconds. That, for Goubon, puts him in 41st place at the moment. It'll all change later on. So the Lotus rider rolling in. We come on air actually after the first drag. There's quite a significant little climb on this course today, early on, and you time trialists back in Great Britain be looking at this one and saying, yeah, these are pretty quick times, but I can do that on the drag strip out on the O1 or up the A1 or whatever the case you might go drag stripping. But there's Axel Merckx comes across the line just on 53 minutes, suffering a bit with his chest problems, which really gave him an awful pacing the other day and took him out of the top 12 placings and down the general classification. So Merckx has dropped out of the top 15 now, and he's lying 21st as at today. Ugramov on the right-hand side, 51 minutes, still the leader. Back out again with Laurent Jalabert. Have a look at that saddle, by the way. See how it comes up at the end? That's specially designed, so in time trialing, you can push yourself back on that saddle. I'm not quite sure what advantage it makes, but nevertheless, it seems to be much likened by the Once team to have that saddle to press back on. Well, Brunel's no slow coach when it comes to time trialing. If we look at the first of the time trials we had, Salamanca, Brunel finished in 4th spot, only some 48 seconds down on Olano. Jalabert finished 2nd that time. Zuller was in 3rd spot, and some of the fire's gone out of Zuller. I'm not surprised, he's had so many problems recently, but Zuller back in 3rd spot on the first of the time trials. Brunel, we're looking at now, was in 4th spot at the end of the 41 kilometres, just ahead of Bartoli, with Bjorn Ries back in 6th. Ries, if you haven't heard the news, is now signed for Telecom, who are now busily building up their Danish connections. In fact, I suppose we might call them the Vikings of the Telecom, because Meinart's joined them as well from Denmark, and they already have Brian Holm in the team as well. Ries has now joined them, so the Telecoms are beginning to pull in some of the lads from the Viking part of the world. Zuller coming in, I said he's not too happy. He's not been firing all cylinders since he had those problems, and he had one stage victory, of course, in the Tour this year up to Plat de Barret. But after that, that was his major achievement, having struggled so manfully to get up the Sierra Nevada when he lost about 13 minutes or so on Jalabert, and then had that crash going down the hill when he ran into some kids, or swerved to miss the kids, and down he went. So Zuller, I think, just riding round 54.07, 15th at the moment. He's done his job. He was tipped to be in the top 3 this year in the Tour of Spain, but it's not to be. So I know that we'll see him come back. By the way, he's always been battling in there in the Tour of Spain to try and win the thing overall, and not a podium position for him this year. Back out there with Brunel, who really is hammering along. This man has got a real new lease of life, and something tells me about it, he may not be contracted on to next year, but he's going hard today.
Every year, Delta fly more passengers than any other airline in the world.
This time trial stays in on the 20th stage of the Tour of Spain, covering 41.6 kilometres. That's exactly 26 miles. The riders going out from the Fear Factory at Alcalá de Henares are curling round and coming back in towards the finish, and the top men are going off last of all. And here we have a lovely battle going on, by the way. On the right-hand side, young Pistori, 148, wearing the white jersey. He lies 2nd on the King of the Mountains competition. and alongside him, he's been caught now by his 2-minute man, Malcolm Murray, but he's not going to let him go that easily. This young man, Roberto Pistori, who had 7 victories last year as an amateur, now turning to pro ranks, hadn't done a lot this year until he came into this race, and he's really been a revelation in the mountains, and is also prepared to fight when it comes to time trial too, although he's been caught by Murray here for 2 minutes. And battling it out here will certainly do his opportunity of getting a good go. Cut straight across. Now you see, as Murray's caught young Pistori for a couple of minutes, Pistori has to move out and go off on the far side here, not to take the draft of the man in front, otherwise the commissaires might well fine him or dock him some time as well. But Murray cut straight across him, because in time trialling it's also down to concentration. When you've got a man who's bugging you, who's riding just alongside you, trailing you not far behind, that keeps coming past you, you get really upset about it if you've caught him for 1, 2, 3 or whatever minutes there may be. So they're having their own private battle back down the road. Pistori and Malcolm Murray, who's been hot-tipped to win the time trial today, but says he tapping the side of his nose. Watch this fellow here wearing number 8 on his back, the previous Spanish time trial champion Olano, who won that time trial which we had on the 7th stage convincingly. De La Santa coming in now. Ugramov's time, right-hand side of your screen, 51.37. The best time we've had so far for the 26 miles. That's well over 30 miles an hour. Giving you time trialists back in Great Britain something to think about, because this has been a very tricky course. There's an active little climb in the midst of the race as well. And these chaps, by the way, have done some 2,000 miles in the past 20 days with only 1 day's rest. Think about that. Pistori on the right-hand side, a bit too close for my liking. The judges might not like this one. But certainly he's using Murray now as a bit of a benchmark. Actually, Pistori finished 33rd in the first time trial we had, 3 minutes and 22 seconds down on Olano. And he's really battling on here to hold his position, which is 6th overall in general classification, 10 minutes and 40 seconds down. In fact, Veronk started this morning 10 minutes 31 seconds down on Jalabert, so only some 9 seconds separate Pistori from Veronk. And so what Pistori was trying to do there, as we now look at Johan Brunel, was use Murray as a bit of a, I would say, a dragster. He's just trying to use Murray as a benchmark to try and go faster and faster and beat Veronk and move up 1 more place. But he'll have to wait and see if he does just that, as Veronk started out on the ride today ahead of sorry, he's starting out behind Pistori, and his times will come in later on. So Pistori ahead of Murray on the road. Veronk is then just between Murray and Brunel. The reason they change it round rather than having Veronk just behind Pistori is that you can't have 2 members of the same team 2 minutes apart. So the Once team are dominating the overall classification, with Jalabert first, Brunel third, and Murray in 4th spot. Been split by Veronk moving into the 4th on the start list today, or 4th and last on the start list. So young Pistori is going to be riding down the road without knowing what Veronk's doing. Nice little interesting competition that will be for us to have a look at when it's all over and done with. Jalabert riding here, no doubt about the fact he can maintain his overall lead in the Tour of Spain. And in fact, I said yesterday, some 10,000 people who are blind or partially sighted are due to be in Madrid to welcome him home tomorrow. But we understand, in fact, the number's now gone up to 15,000. So you pay your money, you get your choice, and there's going to be a lot of people there to watch him come into the finish as triumphant in this race. Olano, though, today looks probably, from the time she had coming in, the man who could well take the time trial stage today. Some recompense. So there we are. Look at those time checks. I said we'd been coming in thick and fast. Olano fastest at every time check. Jalabert being pushed down 3rd, 4th, and in fact the gap between them now just over a minute, 1 minute 22 seconds. But that's not going to dislodge Laurent Jalabert from the top spot in the overall classification. Massive crowd here because the start and finish is almost opposite each other at the Fiat factory. Fiat, one of the big sponsors of the race, providing all the vehicles that you've been seeing over the last 3 weeks or so. And here, Malcolm Mowry and Pistori battling out. Oh, look at the time for Malcolm Mowry. This is going to push him up into first spot. We've had previously Ugramov there at 51.37, and Mowry and Pistori cross the line. Mowry takes a lead. 50.56 is the target now for the other riders out on the road. That'll be radioed back to them. They know what they've got to do now. A fine ride by Malcolm Mowry, and just 2 minutes slower than him will be Pistori, who came alongside him. So that'll be 52.56 as far as Pistori is concerned. Back with Brunel on that amazing monocoque frame. The small wheel at the front, larger wheel at the back, those V-shaped rims on the bike to cut through the wind. The gear changes up on the triathlon type handlebars. You can just put up there and flick the levers forward. Actually, that front fork was dead straight going up into the frame. There's a little bit of elastomer cushion in there, which just takes some of the vibration out of the road. It's quite a unique type of bicycle, this one, but it can only be used for time trialing. And imagine each is being designed and set up for each of the riders, how much they spend on bringing bicycles which may only be used twice in the tour. Because they don't always use these bikes either in the prologue time trial, but if they do, you may say 3 times, but that's not a lot of mileage for such specialist and very expensive bicycles. But every second counts at the moment. So many riders are very closely packed. Veronk and Pistori, as I said, 9 seconds apart coming into this time trial. De La Santa and Serrano of the Kelme team only some 2 seconds apart between 9th and 10th place, while some have got minutes stopped between them and the next man up down the road. 1 or 2 are trying to change places, so they have their own private battle out in what is known as the race of truth, man against the watch. Johan Brunel then heading in towards the finish. Quite a big town now. It's growing rapidly. At one time, very famous Alcalá de Henares for its university, and also the birthplace of Cervantes, who wrote Don Quixote, that famous story about jousting against windmills. So he was born there, and for many years Alcalá de Henares was a big town, but it went into somewhat of a decline while people moved out and went down to Madrid, which is only about 30-40 kilometers away. But now it's getting a new lease of life as industry is growing round about it. I don't know if we're going to see the town of Henares picked up on our cameras, but there's a lovely old ruins, a Moorish castle here as well. And 1 kilometre to go here. The time to beat, that one of Mowry, 50.56. Brunel coming in, can he get this one? Brunel in the time trial we had at Salamanca finished in 4th spot, 48 seconds down at Alano. Mowry finished 7th that day, 1 minute and 6 seconds back, so he's really come back with a bang, and many of the Spanish supporters were tapping their side of the nose and today Mowry will get it. Well, we've seen so far that in fact Olano has been the fastest man at the time checks, but certainly Mowry has come back much stronger. But Brunel in the first time trial was way ahead of Mowry. Let's see what he's going to do now. The sunshine beating down, 20 degrees centigrade, a glorious day, and look at riders here who've been through some really tough conditions in this Tour of Spain this year. Brunel takes 50.41 and goes into the lead then. 50 minutes and 41 for Brunel, and that pushes Mowry back down into a 2nd spot at the moment. Just some 15 seconds separating them, so Brunel has done a wonderful ride here to take that lead. But this is the man all of Spain is rooting out, and look at the absolute enormous armada of cameras and everything else following Olano along. He started 2 minutes after Brunel and is closing up toward the finish. This is a phenomenal ride from Olano. We've seen some fantastic time checks coming in, and there's no doubt about it, this man is riding superbly. What is he going to do in the World Championship in about 10 days' time? It is mind-blowing. He's in superb form now. Great time trialist Abraham Olano coming in then. Look at that on your clocks at the moment. He's going to take first place, 49.37. Wow, that's some ride. Just I'm getting my breath back here. I'm just working out the fact he's just covered 26 miles with a thumping great hill in the middle in less than 50 minutes. So all you time trialists back in Great Britain on your drag strips, you better go and have another thought about that. And he's just done 2,000 miles in the Tour as well, and it's the 20th day. 49 minutes, that's well over 30, about 31 miles an hour on this course today. That's almost unbelievable. I must say it's quite in the Indurain spectrum, because he's a one-off when it comes to time trialing. But it just shows that Abraham Olano, if he can keep this sort of form when he flies out to Colombia for the World Time Trial Championship, which we'll have on Eurosport, the week after next, then he's going to be some hope. Of course, we don't exactly know what will happen when he gets up to altitude, because he will not have the advantage other riders have had of going out and training at altitude. But nevertheless, they've been riding some quite big mountains. But Olano has really thrown down the gauntlet here, the Mapei rider, to take the stage victory. That'll give him 3 stages, in fact. And we're looking now at Jalabert, who's had so far some 5 stage victories. He's not going to get this one. And going into Madrid tomorrow, where there's going to be this enormous turnout of all these supporters of the ONCE team, he won't look, I think, for a stage victory then, because they're going to be pushing and shoving and jostling and having to go for the final sprint. That's usually down to the people who are mad enough to go in there and elbow their way to the finish line, as perhaps you saw yesterday when Saitov's foot came off the pedal, and Vus crashed into Hincapie, and all hell let loose as Baffy took the stage. So if you're looking for a bit more excitement tomorrow, and don't bring your grandmother, by the way, because she might not like it if it gets a bit out of hand, then tune in to our coverage of the finish in Madrid tomorrow. No doubt about it, this man's going to ride in, though, as the winner of the Vuelta. And what a great rider he's been, because he's not only done it through his ability on the shorter stages to take the victories just going off the front. He's done it in the mountains as well. He's always been there. He's shown an enormous all-round form. We saw him in Barcelona on a little circuit race where he just showed his ability as a sprinter Roman to go away and win it. But when we look back at the stage in the Lutzard Den, when the weather was absolutely despicable, he rode and he rode and he rode, and he went in to win that stage there. And also, I have to take my hat off to him. What a gentleman he was on the stage into Sierra Nevada. When he caught up with Bert Dietz, he could easily have taken that stage, added another one victory to him, but he just half-wheeled back and let Dietz take that stage, because Dietz had been away for something, the thick end of 100 miles, I suppose, and he let the Telecom rider drift over the line, and that showed to me a real gentleman's action from this man Jalabert, who's so well liked by the Spanish. He doesn't run off back to his hotel. He'll sign autographs, he'll pose for photographs with the people and the kids, and say hello to people. And when he realised he's going to finish the stage now, and after he's going to have to go up on the rostrum for about half an hour, they present him all the jerseys. In fact, he's got over 60 jerseys so far in the Tour, because he's leading on the overall classification, leading on the points, leading on the King of the Mountain, and now he's riding in here. He's only going to be 4th, but he's kept his yellow jersey. A triumphant procession is behind Laurent Jalabert, the Frenchman now, who's going to be the first Frenchman from way back, what must be about 8 years now since the last Frenchman won the Tour of Spain. He's coming in now triumphantly on the time trial stage, and they roll in tomorrow into Madrid. Jalabert, a fine performance. Tomorrow he's going to meet the Minister of Sport from France, Guy Dru, as he comes in here. In fact, the last Frenchman to win the Tour of Spain was Eric Calatou, who only had 6 seconds advance over a Spanish rider. And now Laurent Jalabert, who's much loved by the Spanish, is going to move on into Madrid tomorrow wearing that yellow jersey, and the crowd are applauding a tremendous performance by this Frenchman who's been so dominant ever since the season started, winning the Pyrenees, winning the Milan-San Remo, and then going on to take many other victories, Critérium International, the green jersey in the Tour de France, stayed in the Tour de France, and today he's ridden strongly, finishing in 4th spot but protecting that yellow jersey. And there you are, you can see the result then that Olano has turned out the winner, just 1 minute ahead of Brunel. Mauri back in 3rd at 1:19. Ugrumov at 2 minutes back. So desperately he tried to win that stage the other day when he got snaffled on the line and dropped back into 7th spot. So our sympathy are with him. And there, Varonk back 3:13. Ahaha, says he. Pistori 3:20. So 7 seconds separate those two. And in which case then they're not going to change place. I thought Pistori might have been sucked along and snaffled the place off Varonk, but it's not to be as we look at Olano, the victor today in the time trial stage of the Tour of Spain. The 20th stage, 1 to go into Madrid. And then the celebrations, I'm sure, are going to start. In fact, Jalabert's going back home. They're having a civic reception for him. It's all being set up now. And the whole of his town, I'm sure, are going to turn out and celebrate the victory of Laurent Jalabert. There, the Fiat factory in the background, because many manufacturers of motor cars like Fiat have moved down into Spain. The Germans have got involved with the Seat company as well, and Fiat to provide the cars for the Tour this year. Olano has closed the gap to 4 minutes 22 seconds. Brunel there at 6:48, also teammate of Jalabert. Malcolm Mauri of the Once team also in 4th spot. So Varonk and Pistori haven't changed places. Garcia and Clavado are still in the same places they were when we started out today. So no major change overall in the general classification, but it has shown the supreme time trialling ability of Abraham Olano, who must be one of those chaps looking for a medal in the World Championship in Colombia. So Olano up on the victory rostrum, having won the time trial stage 20, and tomorrow we're going on the run into Madrid then, from Fiat to Madrid, 168 kilometres tomorrow. So myself, David Duffield, bye-bye, hasta mañana. Running into Madrid, looks like it's going to be a ceremonial lap of honour as far as the Once team. Ooh, a lot of flicking round on the front, but no damage caused. That's an opportunity then as they swing out, but I'm surprised that Telecom aren't trying to work for the setup then for their sprinter, but no, it's Huntermark now. Kai Huntermark, he might have done just the right thing. Everybody will be waiting for Telecom to tow Weizmann into the finish. And what happened? Kai Huntermark went round that bend, put his head down. He's got 1 kilometre, just inside 1 kilometre to go. This is a great effort by the Telecom rider to try and get yet another victory for his team. They've had Bert Dietz win a stage. They've had Christian Hen win a stage. Are they going to get the 3rd stage victory here for the German squad? The Telecom rider up this long drag here is just about hanging on for grim death, and you can see the Millar pulling over. They're absolutely gutted with the chase now, and Hen might have done just the right thing to go, keeping his powder dry for this long run into the finish. He went till they came round the curve, just so 1 kilometre to go, and you see now people are freewheeling in the middle of there. They're just tired, they're tired. They've been racing nearly 2,200 miles have been covered, and he's blown. Suddenly Hen, all the gas went out of his legs, and he's just blown now. He's pulled over the right hand side. That's him out of contention. The sprinters will be thankful for that one as they begin to line themselves up here right across the road. Which is the fastest wheel to take? And looking down there, I can see Mappe begin to form at the front, but Mappe, the white shoulders of Saito begin to throw at the front, and the red jersey of Wust is coming through as well, and he's on the right hand side, busting through. He's going to get it then on the left hand side. It's going to be a close one, but he's made it. Wust on the right, just ahead of Weizmann on the left hand side. That was so close, and the Castelblanche riders here are yet again over the moon. Oh, that was some sprint yet again. Look at this. Oh, that's great. I've never seen that before. The Once riders came across holding their hands up in the sky for the crowd to applaud them, keeping out of the final sprint. Not to say Jalabert couldn't have been in there with a shout, but the sensible chap that he is has decided to come in on his bike rather than on his stretcher Unfortunately, this time nobody fell off and nobody got into the barriers, and it was a good, clean fight, as they say. There are the riders then, the 118 of them that have survived this this course. A very tough tour of Spain it's been indeed this year. It's been full of incidents. We've had those terrible problems with the stomach trouble that the Once team had when they, with the 40 other riders, had the problems of the spaghetti bolognese way back in the race, and even Jalabert went down with that, and like many of them had to fight his way back into fitness. And touring, racing like this, they call them tours, but they're no tour by any means. They're all the way through, sprinting like this, climbing up the mountains, time trialing, riding through wind and rain. We've had hurricanes blowing the rise off the bike. We've had cold, cold days. We've had beating sun at 35 degrees. We've had some sizzling sprints as well. And the riders now have survived the course. And this really is the last big race on the pro calendar, other than, of course, the World Championship coming up. And then the final of the Classics, the Paris Tour and the Tour of Lombardy. Look forward to seeing, perhaps, if we get to the Castle Blanche team in there, how well Vust is likely to do, because watch this man sprint. He's tremendous. He's quite an interesting character, by the way. He speaks 5 languages. He's got a great passion for Australia. He's now scored something like about, 38 or 39 victories to his credit. And in fact, his favourite hobbies are surfing and food and going to Australia, where he's won stages in the past in things like the Sun Tour and what have you. And here is then stage victor, the final one in the Tour of Spain, to go with the one that he got in Valencia. And those who saw him crash out the other day on stage 19 will glad to see him back and smiling after a terrible smash at about 40-odd miles an hour. He's been a pro since 1989. He had 25 victories as an amateur, comes from Cologne, and he's now collected another pot to add to his great list. Well, Vust we watched come through, and Jeske Skibbe was in second spot for the TVM team, and the other one I did spot on the left-hand side was Weizmann, just ahead of Saitov with Baffy into 5th spot. That's confirmation now of the overall classification. You can see the yellow jerseys in the background here from the Once supporters who come here in great... Oh, that's it. Oh, Jalabert says the speaker in the background, and that's going to... In fact, they call him Laurent Jalabert for some reason in Spanish, and there he is now collecting that yellow jersey. Well, Once have really come good this year, and Seitz, their team manager, has worked hard, and it's a very a very rich team. In fact, something like about £3.5 to £4 million worth of money's poured into it. It isn't all about money which buys success. It's how the teams have worked, and when we look back at the driving hard on the front that's been done to keep this man in contention, the way that Neil Stevens has been on the front with long flowing blonde locks in the background, making sure nobody could get away. So it's congratulations not only to Laurent Jalabert here, but the whole team from Once, to Brunel, Di Zabala, Sierra, Lienza Perugia, Mauri, Rincon, Neil Stevens and Alex Zuller, who've done so well in this tour to dominate it then. And Laurent Jalabert, now the first French victory since Carretou in 1984. It's the 9th French victory in the Tour of Spain. The first one was way back in 1955 when John Dotto got that. And the list and roll call of honours includes Stabinsky, Anquetil, Poulidor, Pinjon, Hino won it twice, and Eric Carretou. Now Jalabert, in fact, is going to be the first Frenchman to win a major tour since Laurent Fignon won the Tour of Italy way back in 1989. So there's a lot going for Jalabert, and there'll be some partying in the Old Town tonight. That I'm sure his family are here, his wife Sylvia is here, and he'll be off back to Mazabé to celebrate, where they're going to have a civic reception for him too as well. A well-earned victory for Laurent Jalabert. He did it the hard way. We've seen him attacking, and it's not for many years we've seen the leader on a tour attacking and winning stages on his own. So often it's so cold and calculated the way they win. And here the applause coming from the Prince himself, and alongside that the shake of hands to Prince. That's Guidreau there for the French Minister of Sport. Has been happy, I'm sure, to see this one. Well, it's been a great tour, and to Jalabert, what's going to happen next year? I'm not so sure that everybody's going to get away with things with Jalabert if he flies at this strength and decides to have a real good go at the Tour of France. His time trialing isn't all that brilliant, but he's shown he can sprint, he's shown he can climb. And then coming up on the Bruxton now for second and third, Olano and Brunel alongside him. So from David Duffield, hasta luego.
Eurosport.